Welcome to the Voices of Business, a Santa Clarita Valley Chamber of Commerce podcast. It is so nice to be with you. I'm your host, Corey Nathan, running as sort of the solo host, and that'll make sense in a second. Voices of Business is where we talk about business in the Santa Clarita Valley. And sometimes we don't just talk to, stick to business. We talk about leadership and management and life and all kinds of other things, wherever the spirit takes us. Remember, if you're new to the program, or if you're not new to the program, you've listened to an episode already, either way, subscribe, tell a friend, give us a good rating, leave a review. The reviews in particular really do help. Actually, all of it helps to get the word out so more people can participate in these conversations like the one we're having today with Joshua Maddux. Joshua Maddux is founder of 95Visual, which offers custom web and marketing solutions to ensure results that support individual business goals. Joshua has been on the board of the Santa Clarita Valley Business Group, along with me, actually. We've served together, and he's been great to collaborate with. He's also part of the COC Media, Entertainment, Arts, and Heart District Career and College Readiness Advisory Boards, and he's a member of the Santa Clarita Chamber of Commerce and Valley Industry Association. Joshua, it is so cool to have you back from your various excursions to Mars, the center of the Earth in the 31st century. How you doing, man? You must be tired.
Oh, 31st century, was that my last episode?
Yeah, that was the last one.
Yeah, I think the one with Brian and Lindsay, I threw you under the bus. I was like, we don't know where Corey is. He's off on some exploration. I don't know. Next episode, we'll hear back from him.
Yeah,
It's good.
yeah.
Good to be back. Good to be back.
Yeah. So in all seriousness, man, you've had an addition to the family. Is everybody healthy and happy? And
Is now.
okay.
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
So spent way too long in the hospital, but
All right.
I will say the medical staff and team that we had were awesome, and um also very thankful for medical insurance because we got the final bill of what the hospital would have charged us if we didn't have insurance. And
Eesh.
yeah, yeah, definitely could have bought a very nice car or a down payment on a new house for
Wow.
sure. So yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You bring up an interesting point because we've been in business for ourselves since, let's see, well, actually 3 weeks before Savannah, our oldest, was born. Lisa came home from work and we had coverage. She was on Cobra, I guess, for a few months, but then we had Jackie Boy and Emerson. This is going back to '03 and '05. We were, we were basically on our own. It was not easy for small business owners. It has just not been an easy landscape for quite a few years. So, yeah. Now it's a little bit, there are some different avenues to explore, but I guess maybe that's for our politics. I'll have you on my politics show. We can talk a little bit more about that. I was curious, I know you're on another board with the UCSB. Is that where you went to school?
No, it's not actually. I through high school was actually homeschooled locally, born and raised in Santa Clarita. So I watched when Chamber of Commerce back in the day had the business expo in the parking, or what was a dirt lot at the time, where Kohl's and Whole Foods are now.
Mm,
And so seen all of that type of stuff happen. But yeah, no, homeschooled here locally, and then went to College of the Canyons. So know a lot of staff and professors there. And then I did Laverne, a business degree through Laverne, and UC Santa Barbara is actually a client of ours, and so we work with a few different departments over there. And in doing that, made a lot of connections there, and we had someone in one of the departments say, "Hey, we're putting together an advisory council, and we need someone in the marketing and tech space. Would you be willing to allow us to pick your brain and bounce ideas off you and stuff?" And so it's great to be able to sort of give back to that. My company, over the years, we've had, um, and I lose count on the number of interns that we've had over the years, but like we've done internship programs through College of the Canyons, we've done them through masters, we've done them through other educational institutions. And it does two things. One, obviously owning a marketing and web company, like technology is always moving and there's always, something new coming out. Um, and so it helps us sort of keep on the forefront a little bit of that. Um, and there's also something to be said about like if you do something 100 times and then you sit down to actually explain it to someone else, sometimes you're like, wait, I've been doing it this way and it takes me 3 hours. But if I changed this one thing, it would have taken me an hour to do that. And you're like, well, crap. Okay. Well, I guess we're changing the process here. So I can't tell you how many times, like, you know, we've had an intern who's like, well, why do you guys do it this way? And we're like, well, we do it this way because of this. And they're like, yeah, but what about this? And you're like, oh, yep. Okay. So you
Yeah.
taught me something today too. Cool. Great.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I see those as, great ways to give back, great ways to, talk about the industry and also like looking at COC, well, actually not COC as much, but like Heart District, the career and college readiness stuff, like that is a pathways program that is designed to help high school students figure out their career path, whether that is getting a college degree or not. There are a ton of great jobs that don't necessarily need a college degree. And marketing and computer science is one of those. There are some, you could hop into the marketing space straight out of high school and make decent money. You could also, get a master's degree or a doctorate in marketing and also make good money. Like, so it doesn't, you know, it's also those career paths. Like, obviously, you're not going to come out of high school and become a doctor, like, and practice medicine, like, without a degree. Like, you need a formal education there. And so it's cool to sort of walk through that with some of the students and, you know, talk about the options there that they have that, may or may not include other education.
It's a really good point that you're making. Our first business, we still have it. It's called Nathan McDowell and Rose Inc. And it is a specialty exec search and small scale M&A mergers and acquisitions firm. Our niche is the entertainment advertising business. So that means all the people who make the movie posters, coming attractions. It's this industry within the entertainment industry. And I noticed as part of my job was finding talent, finding people for studios and networks, but really I focused a lot on the agency side. So trailer editors, trailer producers, movie poster designers, art directors, creative directors, all kinds of folks. And to your point, there's a lot of folks who, yeah, they went to film school, or some of the designers went to art school, Art Center, Otis, different schools, or CSUN has a good program, but there's a lot of guys who either never finished college or came right out of high school, some music supervisors, editors, and their education was sitting in other people's edit bay, sitting on a Mac with a great creative director, giving them direction, giving them guidance. Or, obviously a lot of folks don't jump right into those positions. They start out as what we call runners or assistant editors, or, just anything, answering phones at the front desk, but during their lunch hour, or they stay after work, and then they go into a Hall of Fame level trailer editor's edit bay, and they get to pick their brain, and then they try their hand on, used to be Avid when I first started in business. Now a lot of these shops go with Premiere, but there's any number of routes for these types of professions. I was curious though, you said, Laverne, so did you study more business, design, technology, or was it a combination of all that stuff?
Yeah, so my degree is business administration, basically. It's organizational management. And so in reality, I realized fairly fast that I am not a great designer. I employ two awesome designers on our team. We currently have a full staff of 8 full-time employees. And so I am great on the logistics, on the organizing the client information, on project management, on all of that type of stuff. When it comes to um, design, development, some of those types of aspects, I can definitely hop in and come up with some ideas and help brainstorm and, get in the weeds with it a little bit. But when it comes to a finished, polished logo, um, yeah, you want one of our designers doing that, not myself. And so and it's the aspect of like find and hire people who are better than you at what you do as a business owner. Um, and it makes your life a lot easier, which is great.
For sure, for sure. Did you start 95 Visual pretty early on, or did you have a couple other gigs before you jumped right into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I worked a few different jobs. So in high school, a buddy of mine did a door-to-door flyer business, and he he quickly realized that like, wait, you can do a door-to-door flyer for a painter and a plumber and a landscaper and deliver all three flyers on the same route and basically get triple paid. And we quickly realized that. And so we'd do Saturdays and in high school and we'd make, $100 or more on a Saturday. Um, and it was decent money on a Saturday afternoon. You spend a few hours, make $100. It was great. And so from there in high school and into college I worked for a company down in Burbank that my dad actually works for, doing shop fabrication and running cables and doing that type of stuff. And one of the things that I quickly realized there was they were very fast paced, very much what you do today is probably not what you're going to do tomorrow. And it's ever changing. Occasionally there would be a project that would come in and they'd build a widget and they would need 100 widgets. And so for 2 months, they'd build 100 widgets and that's all they'd do.
Mm.
And those are the projects where I would just lose my mind. And I'm like, I can't sit and do the exact same thing for the rest of my life. Some people love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. We need people like that to do certain jobs that require that. But like I quickly realized like that's not who I am. Um, and then from there I started doing like web admin type stuff for a company locally. And um as things persisted there, um, I started picking up some clients and getting into a little bit more web admin type stuff. And then there was a web company locally, not naming names. You probably know who I'm talking about. Web company locally that I sort of followed around and just picked up the clients that they would start a project, they would get 20% of the way done, and then nothing would happen with the project. And so I'd come in 6 months later and say, "Hey, saw you started this thing. Like, do you want it finished?" Um, and so I would come in and just finish it for whatever was left in the contract.
Yeah.
And we did that through one company. And then we found another web company locally that had just folded and followed through their client list and did the same thing. Um, and that's sort of how I initially started. We have had a few iterations in company names. One was specifically um, my brother had actually filed a DBA or whatever and ended up not using it. So I ended up taking the concept of that. We quickly shifted away from that. But for a long time, we operated locally in Santa Clarita as SCV Hometown Web, which was just a DBA of the 95 Visual LLC. And what ended up happening was we realized very quickly that we I'd be at a board meeting with a dozen, board members of a large organization in downtown LA. And when you walk in and you say SCV Hometown Web, you instantly say, I'm not from the area. I only do this one service. And it sounds like you're from Podunk Nowhere at first. And so, you know, realizing that, okay, now I'm going to spend 10 minutes digging myself out of a hole. And so when we were only working primarily with businesses locally in Santa Clarita, the name made sense. But as we started to grow and got more outside of Santa Clarita, and, we target most of our marketing and stuff here locally, but in reality, like, well, you could be a mile down the street or halfway across the world. And in reality, with, Zoom and technology nowadays, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me about those early days of of 95 Visual, I mean, it sounds like you were pretty strategic in how you built up the early client base. Getting the work is a huge part of the battle, but then doing the work is like, oh crap, we got a lot of clients. Oh cool, we got a lot of clients. Oh crap, we got a lot of clients. So how did that? How were you able to scale to the degree that you were able to service the business that you were getting?
The first thing I'll say right out of the gate is there's that roller coaster effect of like market, perform, market, perform, market, perform,
Yeah,
and we still deal with that till this
yeah.
day. That doesn't really go away. I'm in an agency mastermind, and there's a fairly large marketing agency that attempted to solve like a project management issue, and they spent over a $500,000 on this issue building a custom solution. And it's an issue that a lot of agencies deal with. And they're like, yeah, we threw $500,000 at it and didn't fix the problem. And they're
Hmm.
like, it's one of those things where like there are problems in your business. You just need to be okay with having those problems and try not to solve them and move on to other elements. But um yeah, so as things got started, going back to your question, like as things got started, like a lot of my initial stuff was very much just web admin. And that's like cool. 15 years ago, websites, like you didn't just hop into WordPress and go edit an image. Like that didn't exist. You had to FTP into a server. You had to make sure the image compression was correct. So like it took a, an afternoon to go edit a page.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of that type of stuff. I was just editing content, creating new pages, doing some of that type of stuff. And then as we started to get requests for, hey, could you build this? What would this look like? Um, and then working with, a handful of different local companies as well, we had an opportunity to work with HTS and have on and off over the past, I don't know, 10 plus years. Um, and they actually came to us initially just for like a design project for something. And then that transitioned into a different project and a different project. And sometimes we find that like we've been contacted. We had a company that came to us and said, hey, we just need to fix our Google reviews. And then it turned out like it wasn't their Google reviews, it was their sales process. And so all of a sudden now they were coming to us for just reputation management and just fixing their Google reviews. Now we do all their marketing. We do some web stuff for them and a bunch of other stuff. And so, um, oftentimes it's just trying to help provide a solution, not try to sell a product necessarily. Um, and that's really like sort of been an underlying element. During COVID, we hired two part-time or sales guys and stuff just because, networking wasn't like in person wasn't a thing and it was, a lot harder to drum up business.
Yeah.
Um, and one of my things with the guys was like mission before commission. If you sell a project that you are selling something that they don't need, you're not getting a commission for that. And we're refunding it. Like that's not okay. Like we don't do that.
So mission before commission. Um, what? How would you articulate 95 Visuals mission?
Yeah, so our mission is really to help companies grow. And so it's looking at the sort of scalability aspect of that business, um, and what direction they are. And so our official mission is scaling businesses through result-driven marketing solutions. And so if it's something that is going to help the business grow, is going to achieve their marketing solution or their marketing goals, great. If it's something that we're just, selling a product to, sell a product, um, then is that the best option for them? Um, we do consulting calls all the time. Had one earlier this week, where it's like this project could be a $3,000 or $4,000 project. It could be a $50,000 project. Like both of those would provide a similar-ish result. One is going to be a lot more scalable, more refined. The other one's going to be a little bit more patched together, use a few systems. Um, but it just depends, like what's the long-term goal for the business? Um, you know, uh, we had a company, and um, you know who this who this is. I don't want to necessarily say the person's name, but he approached me and said, "Hey, listen, want to do a website, want to like, my old provider is closing down the business, whatever, and I need to move my domain somewhere. Want to do a website." And I said, "Great. What's the 5-year goal for the business?" And he goes, "Oh, I'll be retired." Okay. What's the what's the 2-year goal for the business? Probably winding down for retirement." I was like, "Okay. How many more clients a week do you need?" He goes, "Oh, I can't handle the clients I have right now."
So what are we
Like,
doing?
why are we having a conversation about a website?
Yeah,
Like, honestly, just repoint your domain to your Facebook page and call it a day. Like,
right.
if you want me to do that for you, like, okay, I'll bill you for it. But like, honestly, just hop into your GoDaddy dashboard or whatever and just repoint it.
Yeah,
Now at the end, like when it comes down to like a service, like could we have sold the website? Maybe, but they don't need that
right.
because that's not where their business is going. Um, and
S-
so that's for me, like where that's at.
So I know that you work with all different types of individuals, all different types of companies, and the question is being asked right now. I'm hearing it again in the entertainment advertising space, the way campaigns are done, the way brands or in this case, movies and TV shows connect with audiences, companies, services identify who their audience is, and then connect with them where they're at. It's changing on the fly, man. Like, so I'm curious to hear your perspective on, this program is about, local, small and medium-sized businesses. How, this is a very general, broad question, so take it any direction you like, but how can businesses effectively identify who their market slash audience is, and how do you determine the best ways for them to reach that audience wherever it is that once they determine who they are, who their avatar is, and then figure out where they are. How do you go about that research to figure out the answers to what I call the marketing 101 questions?
Yeah, that is something I will say over the past, really since 2020 has been a dramatic shift in our industry. So in 2020, 2019, 2020, right around there, iOS came out with a new version that stopped cross-device tracking, so you couldn't track, across multiple devices. A lot of browsers block that type of stuff now. A lot of new privacy laws have come out over, the ability to track people's presence across multiple devices and what they're looking at and browsing history and activity and all that type of stuff. Now, I will say I'm a marketing person, but also on the other side, like I'm a consumer. I don't want big tech companies tracking me. I don't want Facebook know what the hell I'm doing. But at the same point, as a marketing person, I want that data. And so it's really hard for me personally because like although I want to have all that data collected as a marketer, I also don't want it collected.
Mm,
Um, and so it is really very fluid in the sense of like you have to be A/B testing. If you're okay with just saying we're going to spend $100 a month, $1,000 a month, $10,000 a month, whatever it is, and if you take your marketing budget and you spend it in the same place every month, month over month, year over year, and you're not testing a new market, you're not testing a new anything, um, when that existing advertising avenue does change, and it's going to, it's not if it will, it's going to change. Your business will dry up. And can you afford to lose all of that incoming, leads, revenue, any of that overnight? A perfect example of this is Facebook. When they first rolled out Facebook Messenger for Business, they had this brilliant idea to allow any business page to message anyone. So Coca-Cola could have messaged all 4 million people that liked the Coca-Cola page.
Wow. Okay.
So we had a company came to us because that is how they did their marketing. They basically just messaged every person that they possibly could as the business page, and
Right.
that's how they did their marketing. It was
Right.
an absolutely terrible marketing plan, but Facebook said, "Yeah, we're going to turn that feature off." Well, that's how they drove 90% of their business. So
Wow.
overnight, their business dried up. And
Mm.
so they frantically came to us and said, "We need to do marketing." And I said, "Great. This is what we would put together as a plan." Now, this company is a client currently. Um, we said, "This is what we would put together as a plan." And they were like, "Yeah, the monthly spend on that is insane. Like, we weren't spending anything before." I'm like, "Yeah, technically you sort of found a loophole.
Yeah.
Um, you found a loophole in the system to get around that." Now, the fast forward, we now run ads on Facebook, on Google. We've done um, on location ads, at physical businesses like posters and that type of stuff. And so it just depends on where your audience sits, and you got to test it. Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll run a specific campaign for a client. They're like, "Oh, we didn't see any results on it." I'm like, "Yeah, but what's your buying cycle?
Right.
If you're, you know, a consumable product, then great. But if you're not, if you're a $20,000, $30,000 purchase, then it might take a while." And to your point, you need to know who is the right person to be purchasing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So theoretically, and just theoretically, if I were to start a mobile detailing company, a car wash company with two friends of mine, um, so we just, it's sort of an inside joke. Joshua is helping me and a couple pals from the SCV business group. We started SCV Mobile Car Wash LLC. And Joshua is a huge part of that rollout. But how did you go when our conference? I was there, so I know how this happened. But how did your brain start to engage on? I get it. It's it's not this far-fetched concept. We know who the market is in terms of residential customers, potential corporate customers. We started brainstorming about that stuff. How does your brain work strategically and say, okay, this is how I can here's three, tactics we can start to deploy right out of the gate. How did you start to um, tease out, brainstorm on what we ultimately started doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the first part in reality, I tell prospects this all the time, like marketing is a you got to meet them or beat them game.
Mm,
And so if everybody in your industry has an entirely crappy website that's very hard to navigate, super terrible information, everybody in the industry has 3.5, 4-star reviews, they've got, five or six. If you can have a decent website with some decent information, maybe a 4.5-star review listing on Google, all of a sudden you've elevated yourself just above the competition. Now, obviously, there's room for improvement. And so, with that industry specifically, a quick Google search says it's a saturated market. Like there's a lot of people doing it, but you also pick up the phone and you call the first one or text them and you can't get a hold of them. You call the next one, you can't get a hold of them. You call the next one, they're busy for a few days. You call the next one. And so all of a sudden it started, for us, like with that business model, looking looking at auto detailing, it was like, okay, the biggest pain points as a consumer here are knowing what the pricing is and knowing when the heck can I get my car washed.
Yeah.
And so the two key pieces of information there are so easy to solve for with technology because, okay, great, pricing, we can build a model based on, type of vehicle, type of service, whatever that is. And then the second part is you can build out a calendar booking system. Santa Clarita is not that big. You can be from one end to the other end in a specific amount of time. You factor that in as a drive time, and then you build it out. And that's what we did. And then you throw in an AI component to that and have it conversational based. And half the stinking people that are on the chat bot don't even
They're
realize
talking
that
to an
they're just
AI.
talking to an AI. And especially we integrated that with an SMS feature. And so people will literally start texting the phone number and
Yeah.
they think it's someone sitting in an office somewhere, which is crazy because like what we charge for that piece is literally like if you were to hire an office staff, just one person in an office who's going to work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, what you're going to pay that person for a year's salary.
Yeah.
Like we come in at like a day rate for the month type thing.
Yeah, a fraction of a fraction. Well, we know that because we know what it is to have an office manager. And if you have a good
Yeah.
office manager, you're looking at easily 40, 50, 60 grand a year, if not more, 75 grand a year for somebody, really at the top of their game. And that's not even talking about taxes and insurance and all the other benefits, et cetera. So to have,
HR risks,
yeah. So to have,
everything else.
what's our AI girl's name?
Sarah.
Sarah. I have to admit, I have a crush on Sarah. She's awesome.
I've seen the chat logs.
Yeah, because she's so personable. She's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great idea." I was testing it out. My first conversation with Sarah was like, she's like, "Is that something you want to?" We got back and forth. I told her what kind of car and like where I am and when I might be able to do it and she's like, "So do you think that's something you want to do?" I got back to her and I said, "Well, I got to just." Check with my wife. She goes, "That's a great idea. Checking with your wife is a really smart thing to do." Like it wasn't just like robotic. It was very human. And I'm like, I like you, Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. We're testing some stuff with a few different companies locally. We've got one that we are rolling out actually. Um, I don't know if it's officially announced yet. We're doing an AI Santa,
Oh, that's great.
which will be fun.
That's
So
great.
we're
So,
working, we're in the process right now of doing voice. And so that whole entire process could be done over a phone call as well. So the AI process you're talking about was text message based. We're in the process of getting that voice as
yeah,
well.
yeah. Demi Moore's voice, that would be my little, you
So,
know,
well, that's the big issue. So like the platform, so 11 Labs is a great AI, you know, they've did a lot of really cool stuff with voice AI. And so the crazy part is all you need is like 20 minutes of someone's conversation
yeah.
and you can clone their voice. And anyone who's been on a podcast or one or two interviews, like, man, it'd be so easy to clone your voice. You've got hundreds of hours of content online. Like,
Yeah.
and the scary part is like, who owns that then? Do I own it? So I can now make a Corey bot and have it just say whatever the hell I want. And you get into this as an issue because there are political figures that people have cloned voices of and then had them robocall
Yeah.
hundreds of people saying, "Oh, I stand for this." And it's, you know, clearly just a tactic to frustrate and tick people off.
Yeah. I do think there's legislation coming that will address that very thing that we
100%.
we own our identity in a way and our voices and our what we might write our imagery that we inherently own that but we're in an interesting time so it sounds like AI is probably going to be what defines the next year, 3 years, 5 years of how your business is going to evolve and how you help other businesses stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. Well, and there's so much stuff that it can do that's just absolutely wild. We have an AI text system internally that our team uses that it has hours and hours of transcript from me
Oh,
of interviews that I've been on and all different stuff. And so what it does is anyone on my team can write a piece of content, for instance, our newsletter,
yeah.
and then put it through this chat GPT system, and it will actually spit out content. It just rewords it and tweaks the content to sound more how I would have wrote that copy. Um, which is just wild
Yeah.
because I never had to touch it. We've done other ones recently. We had a portfolio piece that we needed to launch on our website, and our content strategist was not involved in the project at all. And she's like, I can interview she could interview me, one of the designers, and our developer, and sort of go through that whole process, spend, 20 to 30 minutes with each person, figure out the project, the scope, all that type of stuff, and then write the whole case study. Well, we have a template that we follow for our case study. So I was like, wait, just all of our Zoom calls, our client calls are recorded. And I was like, just grab the transcripts. And we literally just took 14 hours of transcripts and the scope doc and put it through a custom trained GPT, and it spit out a portfolio piece on the back end that our content strategist then spent 15 minutes cleaning up, and now it's live. And
Yeah.
it's entirely unique copy because it's based upon the 14 hours of calls that we had with the client. And that's a majority of the training data. And so I think where those are the two really good examples of like where AI is crazy helpful and it creates really unique copy. Where businesses right now are like just like totally doing themselves a disservice, is going to chat gpt and saying, I run a plumbing company, write me a service page. Like, it's gonna just spit out the most generic service page that your business has. Like, you got to give it context. You got to give it, why did you start the plumbing company? Why are you in business? Like, what's the goal here? Like, you got to give it context and some information. And if you don't, then it's just going to generalize. It's autocorrect. It's just a
Yeah.
really, really smart autocorrect.
That's interesting. Because when I do have to, I should take a class in how to have that dialogue with ChatGPT in order to work with it more in a more custom way. I do it. I do it a little bit. So, for example, sometimes Descript has an AI function where I take a recording, as you know, and Descript, the first step it does is it turns it into a transcript, an interview into a transcript. So with my politics show, sometimes I have to customize the transcript because it will account for, say, the host read promos that we do in the middle of the recording. It will take the intro and the outro. And, in terms of the show notes, what I want is the bulk of the actual interview as opposed to the show notes taking its cue largely from my intro and my outro. I'm like, we already know that. I want to know more about our famous guest that we just had on. So I do want to wrap this up real quick. So I have a couple of fun questions for you. Well, maybe not, I don't know. Maybe they're not fun. I don't know. But what have been some of your secrets to success? What have you done that you say, okay, if I were to talk to the 20 nothing year old version of me, these are some practices, these are some habits that have really served me well.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is like always be learning, always be willing that something's going to change. I mean, in reality, like our team right now, there's stuff in our space that's changing so fast. Right now, we're doing a Friday training. Every Friday, we hop on Zoom for an hour and walk through some of the new stuff that's coming out. Just because we know if we don't, and there's weeks where I'm like, guys, I literally have a list so long, like we're not going to cover this all today. Um, and it's just that's how fast our industry's changing. And so that's, for me is a huge one. Um, the advisory councils, like being in an education space, having interns over the years, like those types of things, being okay with someone saying, why do we do this?
Yeah.
And just again, it all sort of goes back to like just being okay with learning and being okay with continuing to change and adjust and adapt. I think that's a big piece.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then the one of my favorite questions, taking the L, because we often taking a loss. We often learn so much more from mistakes that we made or losses that we had to endure. Tell me about one of your biggest losses or mistakes, and what did you learn from it?
Um, yeah, one of the things that I've heard said before is you can tell how long a business has been around by the length of their contract. Um, and it's definitely true, man. We white labeled our services for a bit, like 10 or 12 years ago through a company in New York. And I was doing 6 a.m. phone calls over Skype. You know, this is what, 2010.
Okay.
Uh, and so, Skype calls 14 years ago were not great.
Yeah.
Um, and it was 6 a.m. their time, so 3 a.m. here in California. Absolutely terrible. We white labeled all our services through this company for a while, and they got paid and they didn't pay us.
Oh, wow.
And so we shut everything off, and then they threatened to sue us, and it was just this whole mess. And so I was like, that was the point in the business where I was like, you know what? If I can't hop in my car and be to your office in 2 hours, I'm not dealing with you. Now that's changed now since obviously Zoom is, internet speeds are better and all of that. Um, but for a while it was like, if I can't sit down in a coffee shop or your office, like I don't want to work with you. Um, and just being okay for that. There are definitely some other, losses. Just projects. We've had some projects that like expectations, like contracts in place, everything's good to go. And we get halfway through the project and the client's like, oh, well, aren't you doing this? I'm like, that was not in the proposal, wasn't in the contract, wasn't part of any conversation we ever had. Like, don't know where that came from. And they're like, well, we thought it'd be super cool to do this. And we're like, this is a, $20,000 project. And what you're describing would cost around $100,000. Like, we don't have a problem doing that if that's what you need. But, and then, that goes sideways because we're not getting what we think we want, you know, so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Defining terms is pretty
Oh,
important.
yeah.
Being pretty clear on what you
Yeah.
do and upfront defining the relationship, the DTR.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
really important. Do you
Yeah.
have any questions for me?
Um,
We might do the reverse, by the way. You might play
yeah.
host
Well,
and with me
yeah.
as guest. So, but
Which is really funny because you and I were both we literally had this exact concept. I actually sent you an email on it. And then like 2 days later, Corey approaches me and goes, hey, I want to interview you on the podcast. And I was like,
yeah,
I literally sent you an email about this, which is great. So, yeah, no, I'll save my questions for later.
you'll keep your powder dry. All right. So before we go, how can we follow you, find more info about 95 Visual and all the great work that you're doing?
Yeah. Honestly, the easiest way is going to be 95Visual on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, our website, sort of all those places. If you Google search me, Joshua Maddux, you'll find some information on me. A majority of that's going to be about a guy who decided to slide down a chimney and sadly got stuck and passed away. And there was a whole crimes podcast series and a bunch of other stuff on that
Oh,
one.
wow.
So it's always funny when someone Google searches me and they're like, "Are you the guy who's dead in a chimney?" Like, pretty sure I'm not.
That's funny. Well, Joshua, this was really great, man. I'm so glad that we carved out some time for you to be the guest, and I'm glad that you're back safely from the 31st century and all the other excursions. And we should do this more often, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome.
Thanks again. And as always, please follow, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us at The Voices of Business on social. You can follow me at Corey S. Nathan. That's Corey, S as in Sam, Nathan, at Corey S. Nathan. We'd love to have you and other business leaders join in on the conversation. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time on The Voices of Business.